Hey folks, this is the fighting nerd Ray Chelinsky and his co-host Jolly Roger, coming to you from the Resistance Bunker. I apologize for the lack of a video last week. I had some computer issues, but I am back. For the very few of you that actually put up with my amateurish videos. I'm going to go way out in the left field and visit my friends in Crazy Town, kinda. I do something along the UFO paranormal lines today. I'm going to talk about the secret space program that the United States and some of its allies are supposed to be running, called Solar Warden, and there are a few other bits and pieces of it. But the idea is that sometime in the 80s, the United States and its allies fielded a fleet of space-going warships that were intended to police the solar system and protect us from various alien races that were visiting Earth. Some of them were friendly, some of them weren't, and some of them were sort of ambivalent toward us. And we had been negotiating with them and dealing with the various races for a long time prior to the Solar Warden getting operational in the 80s. And there are people out there who have claimed to serve and have served in the Solar Warden project and have become whistleblowers. Now, as near as I can tell, this all came from the case of Gary McKinnon. In 2002, McKinnon supposedly hacked into U.S. Defense Department computers and downloaded a bunch of really sensitive stuff. And to this day, he is wanted for cyber espionage by the United States government. And the last I can remember, I think he is still hiding out in Great Britain because he's a British citizen. So he has not yet been extradited. And I'm not sure about the legalities of the case. But one of the things that he supposedly found was references to this project Solar Warden and references to things like extraterrestrial officers or non-terrestrial officers. Now, there is some vagueness about the Solar Warden title. Some say there's another theory out there that Solar Warden is about affecting the sun in a way to fire solar flares at incoming asteroids and comets or space aliens that are heading towards Earth and aren't welcome. But for this video, we're going to assume that Solar Warden is this space navy that's supposedly out there. Now, the non-terrestrial officers reference is interesting. You can take it two ways, in my opinion. You can take one, that there are human officers that are serving in orbit or somewhere in the solar system, or there are officers from other races whose militaries we are cooperating with. Now, this reference was attached to the Naval Network and Space Operations Command, which exists. It's where the Navy deals with their communications and surveillance satellites and networking and the networking of those systems. But the non-terrestrial officers thing, if from what I've heard, is there, and it's very interesting. And he did, from what I understand, mention that at the time of the 80s, when this where the information he found was first entered, when it was current, that the United States was fielding, and its allies, but primarily the United States, was fielding 8 motherships and 43 smaller scout-type ships, or fighters, arranged into battle groups. So you have to assume that if that was true, then we would have even greater capacity now. And then later on came a guy named Corey Good, and who claimed to have been a member of the Solar Warden fleet and was a whistleblower. And he was kind of helped into the spotlight by a UFO researcher named David Wilcott. Now, and Wilcott, if I'm pronouncing that right, but David Wilcott, he's one of the guys that's on the Ancient Alien series and things like that. Interviewed Mr. Good at length, and I'm talking at length. They had an entire series of like 1-hour interviews, 10 or 12 of them, I think. And I watched a good many of them. And then he's done, and Good's on a lecture circuit, and Wilcott is usually close behind or in front of him. Now, you watch those interviews and you read some of the articles and you listen to his lectures. The story is amazingly detailed and amazingly complex. And I'm not going to go into it in this video. You can go out and find all that stuff for yourself. But the basic story is that when Wilcott was a child, no, excuse me, not Wilcott, but when Good was a child, he was recruited, and I'm going to use the air parentheses, by the secret space program, who had been watching him since he was a small boy. And took him up into space, and not entirely by his own will. In fact, it seemed to me that he was abducted against his will. And he was trained to be what he terms an intuitive empath, meaning he senses other people's emotions, a little like Counselor Troy in Star Trek. And his job was to monitor negotiations between humanity and the various alien species that we were dealing with, and make sure that they were on the up and up, telling the truth, and such. And he also claims that for a while he was an interrogator for when one of the aliens broke this treaty and did something that wasn't authorized, and had to be interrogated and maybe punished, or so. And supposedly he served in this capacity and a few other capacities in space out in the solar system on a research ship for 20 years. And then was age regressed back to the same age that he was taken as a child, and sent back through time and returned in the same moment that he had been initially taken, so it was like he was not gone. And he had all kinds of adventures and telepathic, empathic communications with aliens. If I remember correctly, he's kind of this weird boyfriend, girlfriend type thing. Anyway, like I said, his story is really, really complex. If he wrote it as science fiction, it would probably be an ongoing series of thick books. So that's the gist of that. Now, later on, there were other people who came out and said, yep, I was in Solar Warden too. And their stories got even more complex and more fantastic. there was a guy named Kevin Trimmel, who was also you can find on YouTube. And it was basically the same story as good when it came to how he was recruited, air parentheses again. But I mean, he told stories about being forced into sexual relationships because it generated psychic energy and helped him into his remote viewing endeavors on behalf of this fleet. And how he was like good was basically tortured. And it was much more military, and he talked about having another girlfriend. And his story was just a little bit more fantastic. And you had other people like Penny Bradley, and I did make this name up, folks. Alina, the Star Traveler, is a Alifa. I can't read my own writing there, but like Alina or Alifa, the Star Traveler. That's what she calls herself. And they started adding some layers with and Corey Good did mention that there was a separate space program that was run by the International Corporate Consortium, I think it was, or ICC, International Corporate something or other. And there was also this Black Fleet, which was run by the remnants of the Nazis who had gotten this technology from the aliens back in 1942 and had never been really defeated, but were out there running amok in the cosmos. And these other people, Trimmel and Bradley and the Star Traveler, went on. The Black Fleet and the Nazi fleet and all of this other stuff. One was trained to be kind of an assassin and a fighter pilot. Now, I'm pretty open to this kind of stuff. I have been interested in this stuff since I was old enough to read. Back in the day, I used to be hooked on, the old Project Blue Book series, and I think I read every book in my local library on UFOs and Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster and all that kind of stuff. And I think I mentioned it on other videos. I think I've actually seen UFOs. Well, I have seen UFOs in that they were flying and they were unidentified. They were objects. I'm not going to sit there and tell you with confidence and authority what they actually were. But I'm very open to UFOs. And I'm kind of an agnostic when it comes to the whole abduction phenomenon. But I got to tell you, even I have a hard time swallowing the whole secret space program as it's outlined by these folks, primarily Corey Good. And there are a lot of reasons for that, other than, it just seems a bit far-fetched. The way the story is crafted itself is actually kind of ingenious because of this. If you do your 20, they call it a 20 and back tour. If you do your 20 and back, and they age regress you, wipe your mind so you don't remember any of it, and then take you back to the very second that you were first taken, and then, abducted / recruited, like nothing ever happened. Your story doesn't require any proof. All you have to say is, well, I started remembering for some reason. When other people did, all the thousands and thousands of other people that they would have had to be recruited for this. I'm the only one, or one of the few that remembers. Well, do you have any physical evidence? Well, how can I? They took me back in time to the moment I was abducted, so nothing actually could have happened because they took me back in time. It's a causality loop thing. It's the paradox thing. If they took him back in time to the second that he left, it would be like they never took him. Which means that they would have gotten no value out of taking him. So they would have to take him, right? He would do his thing, and then they would take it back, and then that would cancel it out. You see what I mean? So if you had any proof, you know, right, it would actually it would actually prove that nothing really happened, because it would be impossible to prove, because there was nothing happened to be proven. Now I know that's kind of strange, but when you think about it, how exactly would that work? He does his 20, then they regress him 20 years back in the future, make him a kid again, wipe his memory. So all the stuff he allegedly did for them would have never happened unless you've created an alternate timeline. So you take him and you have that timeline going where he's in 20 years and he's having a psychic communion with aliens and, doing all kinds of strange stuff. Right? And that goes, and then you take him back. Now that other timeline would probably could still go on, right? And then, but there would be another timeline where he was there all this time and grew up a nice normal childhood. Now, but here's the rub on that. We're talking about a minimum of 8 battle groups. Dozens of ships. And those ships have to have crews. And those crews would have to be supported by an infrastructure including a whole lot of other support personnel. There would have to be cooks, there would have to be doctors, there would have to be dentists, there would have to be mechanics to maintain the ships. There would have to be dock workers to build the ships. There would have to be dock workers there would have to be workers to repair the ships. There would have to be logistic craft other than the actual fighting craft, like the research ship he was on, to ferry supplies back and forth to the ships. There would have to be a communications infrastructure. We are talking thousands and thousands of people that would have to be individually recruited/abducted, conditioned through torture according to these people, trained against their will, right? And implanted with these little devices they had, so they couldn't think about resisting and rebelling and anything like that, because the computer would instantly know what they were thinking and zap them. Right? That would all have to be done. And then you would have to maintain a tremendous amount of resources, even with the zapper in their brain, making sure that they were doing the line, because they're all essentially prisoners. So they'd have the total line. You'd have to maintain a lot of pressure. You'd have to use a lot of resources just keeping order, just keeping everybody in line. Now, that's a logistic thing, and I'll get back to that. But all of these people, if they're being age regressed, serving 20 years, being age regressed, sent back with a mind wipe, right? Are they creating more timelines every time, different timelines every time? How does that work exactly? What would that do to the order of things? And if it doesn't happen that way, then it's canceling each other. It's canceling out. It's that old thing. You go back in time and kill your grandfather. You can't be born in order to go back in time to kill your grandfather. It's the same thing here. They take them, they do their 20 years, and they bring them back. Right? So what's going to happen? That's going to keep repeating itself, because they'll have to grab them, do their 20 years, and then take them back. Wouldn't that just keep repeating itself over and over again for all of these individuals? Or would it create thousands and thousands of alternate timelines? But no matter how that works, though, if anybody came up with a piece of evidence, if they had one of these little clear plastic data pads that they all talk about using, let's say they brought one of those back, but it's supposed to be a clear piece of plastic that, like, a really high-tech iPad. Let's say if they had one of those, and it could be proven that it was from 20 years in the future, well, then that would actually negate what they were saying, because if they were taken back in time, then none of the stuff that they had that they had done that would lead up to them stealing that iPad would have ever happened. I know that's mind-boggling. There's an episode of Deep Space Nine where Miles O'Brien said, "I hate quantum mechanics. Temporal mechanics. It gives me a headache." So, but the whole time travel issue causes all kinds of cosmology problems, but at the same time kind of seals up the story, because if you want to believe it, you can, because any proof that it's true would be proof that it's false. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I've been contemplating it for a while. And then let's think about the utility, the practicality of that method of recruiting. Any military guy will tell you. Anybody that's had any kind of a leadership position will tell you that people who don't want to be doing a job, and they're doing it because they absolutely have to just to live, or they're working for a company and they were doing one job and you transfer them to another job that they don't like, or in the military if you have a conscript force. Nobody wants conscripts doing their job if they can avoid it. You want people that want to be what they're doing. Yeah, so they are self-motivated. So having not only just a draftee force, but an imprisoned force for a military endeavor, it would not only just be ideal, it might be disastrous, because, like I said, the first chance they got, they're liable to go over to the enemy, right? Or even if they have things in their head that zap them what happens if you're in the middle of a battle and they decide, screw this, they took me away from my parents, they tortured me, in some cases they say they altered my DNA, they screwed with my brain. I'm just not going to fight, no matter how many times they zap me. I'm not doing shit for these people. Okay. And you wouldn't need to do that to people in order to maintain secrecy. We've got a military full of people, and very few of them violate operational security, at least not in a serious way. And we have agencies like the CIA and the DIA and the NSA and all the other alphabet agencies that are absolute experts in containing security threats and using misinformation to discredit people who violate security, violate their oaths. There are always a little bit of leaks here, a little bit of leaks here, but they're managed. So just that method is so wildly impractical that no one would, in my opinion, even if they had the technological capacity, they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't have to. 9 times out of 10, if you get a guy, especially who's already volunteered to be in the military, look, you've got a secret assignment. You're going to be gone for 20 years. You won't be able to tell anybody about it. But it is vitally important. We can't tell you anything more until you sign the non-disclosure paper. They do that kind of thing all the time. Sign this, right? And off they go. You got a person that wants to be there, that is willing and eager probably to be trained in whatever capacity you need to be trained in. And he does not have to be supervised constantly to make sure he complies. And there's also the fact that if they're out in space for 20 years, who are they going to tell? You can monitor communications back and forth. You can limit it, right? And you can tell the people back home any cover story you want, right? I volunteered for a tour in Afghanistan. I volunteered for Shining Mountain, or it's classified. Mom, I can't tell you. So all of this elaborate time travel, age regression, not needed, not even desirable. And then let's start with the age. Let's go with the age regression thing again. I'm not a biologist. I'm not any kind of a scientist. But let's do a hypothetical here. Let's say I was a member of the Solar Warden fleet and I don't remember. I'm turning 50. This is Sunday the 21st. I'm turning 50 on Friday the 25th. But let's say that little Ray, when he was 10 or 12 years old, and under the reading a comic book under the blankets when he should be sleeping, gets taken by the TR3 floating triangle and has his brain scrambled, is tortured into submission and trained to be let's say we're trained to be one of these cosmic assassins, like one of these people said that they were trained to be, right? Outer space ninja. Right, so I was trained this way, right? Did my 20 and back tour. Then they regressed me, like my brain, returned me to the exact moment I was taken. Okay, so let's say they altered my genetics, repaired all my telomeres, and made my body 30 years younger, 40 years younger. Would I shed mass? Would I actually shrink physically? Now, granted, we're talking about time travel, and they have weird laws. They have weird laws of physics. But how exactly would that work? Because, I mean, we're talking about huge, not just DNA, but brain size, brain chemistry, right? The brain chemistry of a 12-year-old, 10 minutes on the internet, you can find this out. The brain chemistry of a 12-year-old is a whole lot different from the brain chemistry of a 50-year-old. So that they're going to do all that. And then they take you back, and of course, all of the temporal causality problems that I outlined earlier would begin. So that doesn't make sense to me at all. And the idea, well, if they just have a higher technology, well, we're getting into the whole Arthur C. Clarke thing here of any technology that it was advanced enough would appear to be magic, because what they're basically saying, hand wave you. Well, this is just the way they do it. We don't really understand it, but it's alien technology. And folks, here's where it is too. Now they say we get technology from the aliens, but they give it up grudgingly, right? For access to genetic material and things like that. When they abduct people, and basically they allow people to be abducted like cattle and things like that. If these aliens had the time travel technology to be able to actually regress people back to childhood and have them shed mass, or just for that matter, just get from one solar system to another, they would be so much more advanced than us. And if they wanted to take us over, they would. Now, this is answered by Good and the others that say, well, there's some aliens that are on our side. So, but again, why would they need to go through all of these complicated procedures? And with these aliens that are supposed to be ethical enough to help us defend ourselves against the bad aliens, if they're that ethical and are supposed to be so much wiser than we are, they would allow you to do that to your own people using their technology? So, what exactly are the ethics and the morals of the good aliens, let alone the bad ones? Uh, and then all of these guys, everybody so that I've found out that claims to be Solar Warden, Secret Space Program survivor, or experiencer, or whistleblower, whatever they want to call themselves, also say that they were indoctrinated with a healthy dose of New Age religious philosophy. And I know the New Agers don't want to be called religious, but folks, it's a religion. It may not have any popes or deacons or, or ushers or whatever, but it is a system of belief. It's not really a cohesive, but it is. But everybody's belief is similar enough that you can call it a religion. But I'll be nice. We'll call it a belief system. But they've been hit with a whole bunch of this, uh, New Age religion, where where mankind has to learn to vibrate at a higher frequency, and there's this crystal, and you have a certain diet to help you reach nirvana or kundalini or whatever you want to call it, and psychic powers, and you have some aliens that vibrate at a higher dimensional rate than we are. I'm not going to get into New Age philosophy, but there's always a whole bunch of that mixed into this too. And because it's a belief system, you can incorporate all of this stuff into that belief system. And that belief system can tend to interfere with rational judgment. So you get people that really, really believe this stuff. Now, as you probably know, when it comes to this secret space program, as I have probably clumsily described here, I am a huge skeptic. Aside from all the other stuff that I just said, logistically, it would be damn near impossible to keep this secret. For every person serving on a warship, there would have to be 5 or 10 support personnel. We're talking thousands of people here. And as I said, you have to take food out. All those people would have to be fed. They'd have to be clothed. They'd have to be sheltered, right? If they're in artificial environments, the artificial environments have to be maintained. They have to have communications. Right? This would be an incredible expenditure of resources. And I don't care what kind of technology or security gizmos you're using, it would be almost impossible to keep this all secret. Now, my personal theory is that we do have a secret space program, but I think it's much more likely that we have orbital weapons platforms which are illegal. We probably have everybody, more than one country probably has nukes in orbit. We probably have nukes in orbit. More than one country probably has nukes in orbit. In my mind, that's kind of an open secret. I think any thinking person knows that there's that would, at least can buy the possibility that there's some orbit. We probably have other types of weapon systems. We probably have surveillance systems in orbit that are 20 or 30 years ahead of the already pretty good ones we know about. And they want to keep that secret. And there could be this could be a smokescreen for a whole plethora of stuff that they're doing. Right? Now, I talked about this in another video. When you take the New Age stuff and you take the UFO stuff and all this other, and you put it against put it alongside and you lump it in. We'll use the term lump it in. Lump it in with all the more believable stuff. If somebody says, look, I think we have a nuclear weapon orbit. I think we have had. And maybe other countries do too. And they don't want a public uproar. And maybe not. And that would be hard to keep secret too. Right? Or maybe it's not nuclear weapons. It would be tough to keep that secret, I will admit. But maybe we already have. Maybe the Star Wars system from the 80s was operational and better than we ever thought. Or maybe there's just satellite surveillance capability that is far beyond, what they admit to. And if anybody pointed this out, that they're using this technology, to see through your ceiling and watching you and your significant other make babies, right? That might cause some problems for them. But then, hey, well, yeah, secret satellites, yeah, we can't do any of that stuff, folks. I mean, you're looking like this Corey good guy. And I think that's what this is. I think the whole secret space program is this massive smokescreen, or just an outright hoax that he perpetrated. Now, because these other people came out of the woodwork later, along with a guy named Stuart Swerdlow, who claimed to be a member of the Montauk Project, which will probably be another video, and this had to do with the Philadelphia experiment and other space aliens and time travel and abducting people and psychic powers and things like that. That didn't have anything really to do with the space program, but had a lot of similarities. So people kind of said, well, they're kind of backing each other up here. Okay, but it is either a massive disinformation campaign or it's this good hoax that David Wilcott and Corey Good perpetrated. And then the government said, hey, wow, we could really use these two. By the time we get done helping these two spread this crap around, nobody will believe anything that we're doing. Nobody will be able to believe the truth even if we told it. And that's the thing. A lot of these people came out, and each story was a little bit more fantastic than the next. And I also understand from listening to an interview with Penny Bradley and the Star Traveler that Corey Good is getting a little bit irritated with them trying to steal his thunder and has started to copyright some of the terms that he uses in his lectures. The ICC, the International Corporate Consortium, I think it stands for instance. I'm not allowed to use that, at least not in the context of the secret space program and a few other things, and I guess he's pretty vicious about going after people legally that way. So, I mean, hey, I'm a whistleblower. I want everybody to know this because, hey, the American people have a right to know, but don't use those terms because it's costing you money. So that's where I am on this. When you start the New Age stuff and you go really out there in the left field with a story that's impossible to prove or disprove, and it seems to adapt. That's another thing. It also seems to adapt to current events and criticisms. Because lately he's been saying that he has been given permission to talk. Corey Good has actually been given permission. Before they were trying to shut him up. When he remembered he wasn't supposed to remember, they tried to shut him up and they threatened him and they drug him back and all this other stuff. But now he has permission. And the thing is this, because if they have all of this ability and they wanted to stop him from yelling and screaming from the rooftops about this shit, they would. I mean, theoretically, time travel. They could kill him, and he would never have. They could, They could kill him, or they could dump him in pre-Cambrian area or whatever, and that would be that. And nobody could stop them. And so, because of that fact, they kind of want. Some of the people there are kind of protecting me. Not everybody wants me to let this stuff out, but some of them do, and they're protecting me. So I gotta have permission now. And all of these other people are disinformation. They're liars. They never, because I'm super special. I'm the only one who could possibly remember all of this other stuff. But these people are out there, and you're getting more and more of a progression of. It's just getting more and more fanciful all the time, and it's really hard for Corey Good to say they're lying because they're using elements of his story. And who's to say that they're lying and he's not? There's no way for him to disprove, since there's no way to disprove him, there's no way he can disprove them. So yeah, that's where I am. This just does not hold up to the logic test, and I think you waste a lot of time uh, delving into this because it's part of the New Age belief system, and it is a belief system. And you spend a lot of time in there, the stuff that really needs looked into, what's really going on with the UFO phenomenon, the abduction experience, what's really going on with them, right? And not just the really fanciful stuff. You get distracted by the whole secret space program. You know, Venezuela's falling apart, right? Somebody blinks wrong in the South China Sea, and the United States is at war with China. Where Russia is rearming. Right? And there are forces behind all of these things that are not up front. It's not all about President Trump and Xi Jinping or Kim Jong-un or Vladimir Putin. They're important. Don't get me wrong. I'm not one of these people that say they're not really, they have the power. But there are the bankers. I'm talking the huge international investment bankers that have so much power in this country. But you focus on the secret space program that is ephemeral. You really can't prove it one way or the other. You can go in and find out where, if you look hard enough, there are books out there. The late Jim Marrs was really good at this stuff. But there are books out there that will tell you where the money's going. Sometimes it's hard to find out where the money comes from. But you can call it the Illuminati. You can call them the elite. You can call them the Brotherhood of the Dragon, like David Icke. I don't believe the whole shape-shifting lizards, are in charge thing. But David Icke is correct that there are forces, a lot of them very ancient forces with a lot of money and influence, that are still moving things behind the scenes. And these are some really ancient bloodlines that you can go back to. And I really think that this whole secret space program thing is a way to distract you from that. And the nuts and bolts UFO things, which, if you look at Gary Wayne and L.A. Marzulli's work, have a lot to do with these secret societies. So, there is the real world, even though it's a crazy conspiracy theory world, that it can at least be researched in some logical fashion. There are records that you can look at. There is history you can look at. Right? You can prove or disprove or at least find evidence indicating certain things. With the secret space program, looking into it, researching it is a waste of time, because no matter how much research you do, there is nothing solid to find. And in preparation for this video, and also, I've said before, I write novels, and one of these days I could actually make a hell of a novel out of this, if Corey Good doesn't sue me. But when I was researching this, for the actual people that call themselves researchers, I'm just a guy that writes novels and writes books. And does research to support his stories. And now rant on YouTube. But for the actual people that are want to do research on this, I really do think it's just a waste of time. The true researchers, the people that call themselves scholars, the people that call themselves journalists, there's nothing here unless you just want to make videos and sell advertising and make money and go on lecture circuits and make money with it. There's nothing here. That's my 2 cents. And I know if anybody actually sees this, they might get really annoyed with me. And this is a really long video. But there was a lot to cover here. But I think that's pretty much it. I just think this version of the secret space program, the Solar Warden, is just absolute crap. That's the bottom line. And I've outlined my reasons why. There are more, but the big reasons. So, with that, I will bid you to remember that words make history. This is the Fighting Nerd, his co-host, Jolly Roger, leaving you tonight from the Resistance Bunker. Good night.